Hello everyone and welcome back to the stream. It is Thursday the 8th of January in 2026 and it is nearly 4 o'clock here in the UK. Welcome back. Happy New Year. I hope you had a tolerable, lovely or survivable holiday period, delete as applicable, or multiples of those. Yes, hello. I was away longer than I expected to be. I'm sorry for that. My Christmas period was hard work. I think also the fact that I'd had that nasty wisdom tooth infection just before, and then I was dealing with other health stuff going through it, and then obviously Christmas itself is traveling and stuff and difficult. So I took an extra week off, and I'm very glad I did, because it did help, both to help me to rest and then also to have the when I did get back to working on Monday, it was a little bit easier, I think, because I'd taken that extra time. So hello. You'll also notice, look, the top-down camera. It's the correct orientation. I'd like to thank a bag clip from the kitchen and duct tape for the structure that is holding this aloft. But yeah, so I'm going to quickly give like a little bit of overview of what I've done so far this week, because I've already been working for several days, and also to talk about like what's going on this month and the deadlines I have and how those are all working. So let me just pull my calendar out actually so I can see it as I talk to you and speak with knowledge and authority. You'll notice I'm not on face camera today. I wasn't feeling up to that, but I'm here. And you can see my hands and my watch. That's it. And my drink. I wanted to still stream even though I didn't feel able to be facially visible today. As you may know, some days I'm okay with being perceived in some ways and not in others. And today I do not wish to have a face, but I do wish to be, I was going to say psychically present. That's a wild way to have phrased it. Anyway. Oh, I'm also getting used to where I'm now putting my microphone, because my microphone previously I used to have here. The problem is, like, with the top-down camera, that's kind of like, I hope you didn't want to see anything. So I have it now, like, on the side. But yeah, so I started back at work on Monday. Obviously, I get to decide when I do and don't do this. Christmas is the time when I'm very specific about taking a prolonged, like, 2 weeks off. Being part-time, that's not quite as much time off as it, might seem like. But I generally have to travel quite far to see my family for Christmas. So in addition to doing that, I then have to recover from doing that in order to have any actual time off. So that's what I was doing. And I went back in on Monday knowing that I had some pretty significant deadlines this January. So one of them was a last round of peer review edits. That was the one where I missed the original deadline because I needed a fourth round of peer review. And I have now done that, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, so I had that deadline. That deadline was a week from today. And then on Monday, I also have the deadline for submitting for my end of minimum period of registration review, which for the purposes of not, like, tripping over my words, I'll just say review for the rest of this discussion. And you can just know that I mean my end of minimum period of registration review, which is basically through your PhD here, or certainly in the way that my university do it, we have a formal review at the end of every year. You have to pass those to be permitted to continue your PhD. I've passed all of them so far with basically a distinction, which is technically the candidate is making exemplary progress. Sounds very fancy. It is different this time. This is my last end of year review. Because I'm about to hit on the 1st of April, I hit the end of my minimum period of registration, hence the name. The minimum period of registration is the minimum time that you have to be enrolled in the PhD before you are allowed to submit your thesis. Now, it is very rare that people submit their theses then, because that's not the so it takes 3 years to do a PhD normally. Or for me, I'm doing it in 6 years. The end of the MPR, I don't know what the date is actually I'm assuming 2.5 years in for full-time people. For me, it is 5 years in. So, the 1st of April this year, is the point at which I could hand my entire thesis in. Shock, I won't be doing that. 1 second, I just need to blow my nose. I've avoided winter colds because I mask everywhere, but I've got winter snuffles. In fact, I've got new masks here that I got recently that I use filters in them and have cloth ones because they're more comfortable for me. And they've got cute prints on, but that's beside the point. So yeah, this is like my other end of year reviews in that what I have to do is a form that explains everything I've done in the past year, including like professional achievement as well as stuff I've done on my thesis itself. I know I'm yawning. We're getting all the bodily functions in straight away. I slept 9 hours last night. I don't know why my body thinks it needs more oxygen. Probably from the talking. Yes, so I do that form. And then also, normally what I would do is submit everything I've written in the past year. Because this is the end of MPR review, I submit everything I have written for my thesis so far. Which is a little bit scary. Obviously, a lot of that already done. 3 chapters of that completely finished. And what I am... Oh, my phone is not on silent. No, we don't need the AIM message notification sound for all of us to hear. Yes, so I will have to submit everything. Now, this is not required, but I want to show that I've made a good amount of progress on the final main chapter. So what I am doing is working to finish the History of Madness and TTRPGs write-up, which I was doing a bit at the end of last term, and am now working on. Just so that I've got a clear, whole big section done, they can see what this chapter is starting to be like, get an idea of the direction it's going in, and also see that I have made substantial progress on it. The reason for that is that the way that this review is graded is not the right word, but reviewed is my alternative, and that just sounds weird. The way that this assessment is, the way that this review is assessed, is you can be given one of 6 or 7 outcomes. Some of them don't apply to me, because one is you can hand your thesis in on the 1st of April, obviously. I'm not doing that one. Then some of them are you can continue with an extra year paid for by your funding. I don't have external funding, so that's not relevant. The ones that matter to me... Oh, there's also the ones that will not happen, and my supervisor has reassured me will not happen, which is being put on academic probation or being kicked out of the university. Naturally, my brain immediately, when I was reading the format for this review, saw those and went, "Oh my god, I'm gonna be kicked out." I'm not gonna be kicked out of my PhD. Um, so, what's realistically likely to happen is one of three things, sorry. Either they're going to say, "We think that you should submit on your original deadline of the 1st of April 2027, so a bit over a year from now." Or they're going to give me extra time, which falls into two versions. One of them is extra time on full fees, and the other is extra time on half fees. Now, because I'm a one, I already think I might be eligible to 3 months extra because I started in lockdown, and that was like a standard thing. I just don't know if that still applies, and I'll find out in the review. There will be people there who know. um, uh, I'm more likely to get extra time on half fees because the difference between full fees and half fees is if you need access to certain resources. And as a humanities scholar, literally the resources I use are, the library and information services stuff that you have access to anyway, and my supervisor. I don't have a lab, I don't have, an office space or anything like that. I'm not teaching. None of those things that might otherwise apply to me. And I am okay if it takes, 3 to 6 months longer. I have this and I have this thing in my brain. There's no reason for it. I think I've talked about age on here before. I'm okay with the fact that I'm a bit older now. I don't find it distressing that I'm aging. I think partly because my body has already fallen to shit, so I don't have that part of aging to worry about. I mean, I do. It can get worse. But you know what I mean? Like I've had chronic back pain since I was 18. I don't I'm not gonna go like, "Oh god, when I turned 30 my back started hurting." But anyway, the point is I've had a lot of like lost time in my adulthood. And whilst I don't feel that I have to make up for that necessarily, disclaimer, I absolutely at times think I need to make up for that. I don't morally feel I need to. I might sometimes emotionally feel I need to. There is still a part of me that wants my PhD before I turn 40, and I turn 40 in September of 2027. So 3 to 6 months extra. Actually, if it's 6 months, I won't get it before I turn 40 because this deadline is the text submission date. It then takes time to schedule your viva after that, and when you pass your viva, that's the point at which you get the doctorate. So realistically, if I handed in on the 1st of September, I wouldn't get it before I turned 40. But yeah, so I've got this vague thing in my brain. But ultimately, I want whatever decision is made between me and the board, I want to be the best decision for me. And that includes not putting myself under undue pressure, being realistic about how long things will take, and giving myself enough time that I can make this thesis as good as it can be. Because I do genuinely believe and I found this through all the reviews I've had, I do really believe that all of the staff there want me to succeed, and be the best academic that I can, and often, sometimes being a bit generous or gentle with people is the way to do that. In fact, very often it is. So yes, that is that, and the review is on the 19th of January, and I have to have all of this sent in a week before, so my deadline is the 12th of January, which is next Monday. So when I started work this week, on Monday, I sort of got in and planned everything, looked at my email, discovered from my email that my other peer-reviewed publication is being published on the 2nd of February. And I discovered this because I got invited to a publication celebration event. They were like, hey, we're in the final stages of this. What's your availability on this day for, is it the 2nd or the 5th of February? It's one of the two. I can't remember. I think it's the 5th actually, because it's not a Monday. So yeah, that was really lovely because it was like I started with the knowledge that I had succeeded. Like the first thing that happened in my work year was learning that I'd succeeded at a thing, which was really nice. And I think that's a lot of why on Monday I was able to just do all of those peer-reviewed edits and send them in for the other paper. That's the one that's had a lot more rounds of review. That was round 4. It was very hard work. There were some points where, because this is the one where I can't remember if it was 3 or 4 reviewers in total looking at it. I think it was 3. And the first 2 reviewers thought it was great and ready to publish, and the last reviewer had some quite strong concerns about it still. I agreed with all of their concerns, even if like it might have been things I hadn't necessarily recognised initially or thought I had fixed enough. But there wasn't anything they were asking me to do where I was like, oh no, you're wrong. I think they were correct in all of it and helping me make it better. In some places their wording was a bit firm, and so there were points where I was like, take a breath, they're helping you make this better. They've gotten, sometimes I get enthusiastic about things and say them a bit too bluntly. Some people are like women or non-binary people in male-dominated fields who are required to talk more bluntly in order to, have any power, this kind of thing. Yeah, I got through that and sent it in, and it's all done. So that other deadline, I just don't have to worry about in the slightest. Why do I need to blow my nose again? Is it because I'm talking? All right, 1 second, and I will to explain the next bit, move us over to here. Welcome to Scrivener. You are going to see discussion of madness / mental illness, ableist language, and the mistreatment of people who fall into that category, and monstrousness and that kind of thing on this screen. Just as a general disclaimer. Obviously, I have the timed disclaimer that goes off in chat, but that only goes off if people are talking. So if we're in a lurker day, then like we are right now, then you're not going to see that warning. So I will periodically give you that warning verbally. Welcome to this chapter of my thesis. This is what we were writing here last year. God. And I had a bunch of this done already. So I had sections like this, which then had some write-up and then some bits that were in bullet point form. Thank you. You have to say a certain number of things and then it will be like, whoa, here's a warning. But don't feel you have to do that. And hello. Most of my sections were like this. So what I did was I went through and worked out how many of those blocks of bullet points I had left to do, which was 4. We have this Call of Cthulhu section, the Cyberpunk section, which is next, the Vampire the Masquerade section, which I did on Tuesday, as you can see here. I really wasn't feeling like I could do anything, and then I wrote all of this. Now, a lot of that was text from here. on the right hand side. But and then lastly, I have the Dungeons and Dragons section, which is us moving towards thinking more about safety tools. So I kind of needed to do one of these a day. Yesterday I had a doctor's appointment and therapy, and I just got a bit wiped out, and I was gentle with myself and said, no, don't push and try and do that as well. Because my therapy session was quite intense, because obviously decompressing and processing all of Christmas, and I had a really that week before Christmas where I didn't stream a bunch of times and was very like mad. I had some like distressing stuff that I needed to process in therapy yesterday, so I got through therapy and went no. So yes, basically, I will try and write probably one of these today and 2 of them tomorrow, or 1.5 today and 1.5 tomorrow. It really depends. But yeah, that's what we're gonna do. The problem is, you see, I've been procrastinating for the past half hour by talking to you, and I don't want to start. Which is always the problem. I did not want to get out of bed this morning either. Like, I woke up with my alarm, like, didn't, like, sleep through it or anything. And then was just, like, on my phone in bed for a solid hour, and then went, I don't want to get up. Because it's so cold. It's a lot warmer here than it has been. It was -6 last week. Celsius, obviously, which is too cold. It's too cold. We also haven't had the snow that the rest of the country has had here in the southeast, which is pretty normal. We don't tend to get as much snow because, like, for those who can't visually imagine the shape of the UK, the southeast is there's like a lump which is like East Anglia, and then underneath it there's like it comes to a bit of a point, and I'm in that point, so I'm sort of coastal in 2 directions, which is why we just get wind here, wind and rain, and seagulls. But I do need to do it. And also, I can use a lot of the existing text. That's what I found when I was doing the vampire bit the other day, is honest. It took me 15 minutes, and it was 1,200 words, that section. And that's really embarrassing that I did that in 15 minutes after working myself up for so long. But that is honestly what happens most of the time, is starting is the worst, like you say. And I have to get myself through the working myself up to something. And then when I start it, it's not that bad. What I think I might do, I had thought to myself that I wouldn't Pomodoro, but maybe I will at least start with one, because that way, that makes me start it. So, oh, sorry, that may have given you a horrible noise. I'm still not used to the arm of my microphone being there. I've got an idea, which is what if we came back to here? Bear with me. And I get rid of this. And I add, no, I don't want a new scene. I want a new source. Been a little weird for a second. No, order. Move down. Oh, control and down. There we go. Now I can adjust that. Because this way we can have all of the there we go. This way we can have all of the widgets for co-working on the screen. And I will Return the Pomodoro timer. Let's leave it on 2. And we can do 2 15-minute ones, which, as noted, could involve me finishing everything I need to do today, or could not. Oh, that's gonna really, hang on, that's gonna really... Where is it? Scrivener capture. No. I'm gonna have to... do it this way. That'll do. Oh no, actually hold on, because there's a bit on the left-hand side. There we go. Okay. We'll do 2 15-minute Pomodoros. I'll have a 5-minute break in between them. I think that's probably going to be the best way for me to get through this. I don't know which one I'm going to start with. I think probably what I will do is read the notes I have in my previous write-up. Look at that alongside the bullet points and see which one calls to me. I do this when I'm writing fiction as well, because I will often have, like, my scenes will look like bullet points like this, and then I will just see which one I'm vibing with at any given time and write that one, and then write out of... I tend to start a story in chronological order, chronological order, and then deviate wildly from it. So yeah, hello, it's Pomodoro time. This is my Pomodoro voice. I will turn up the music when we go into Pomodoro, and then you will just have some vibe. And I'll put in obviously my tasks are empty right now. Once I know which one I'm starting with, I'll put each bullet point in there, and then I can track mine that way. But you are also welcome to add your tasks to the task list, which is on the screen, or you can just *sweet help, I think. And yeah, just like that, they go up on the list, and then we are all gently co-working together. So I will do 15 minutes on, 5-minute break, 15 minutes on. But you are welcome to set your own timers if you wish to, or follow mine. Whatever you wish to do. And the important thing is that it is hard to start. And that's okay. And sometimes this can give us the gentle nudge into starting that we might need. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And at least you tried. So yeah, I will start us off with timer 15, 5. And yeah, I'll be muted, but I will be here and you'll see me working. And I wish you the best of luck. Ding. Ding. Oh, I'm finding a reference, and if I don't continue this, that was my computer, not yours. Because Zotero needed to update. If I don't do this now, then I will forget that I need to do it. So I need to find. I really should own my own copy of this book, but it's one of those ones that's so expensive. It's £80. It's the Sublime Object of Psychiatry, Schizophrenia in Clinical and Cultural Theory, by Angela Woods, which I am citing. It's a fantastic analysis of how schizophrenia is like used as a clinical and cultural object, as well as a diagnosis, including this idea that it's like the MHRA. Yes, copy to clipboard output mode notes. That's it. Yeah, it's this idea that schizophrenia like stretches beyond and has been so used by people as an example that it has become something beyond what the experience of schizophrenic people is. I also need to. This is formatting. This doesn't count too much as work. I also decided on an order in which I was going to do this and then instantly deviated from that order. Table 5.2. So this is figure. Oh no, it will be table 5.1. This will be figure 5.1 because they're different things. Figure 5.1. An image of table 4.4 from the. Is it 2003? 2020? It's not 2023, it's 2002. Hold on. A percentile die would be wrong. Percentile dice is better. Percentile dice, and listing the following disorders in order. Anxiety, dissociative. I want to be good about doing image descriptions, but also I think like copying all of that text at that point, I might as well have made it a table. So in this instance, I'm gonna just list anxiety, dissociative, eating, impulse control, mood, personality, psychosexual, schizophrenia, psychotic, sleep, somatoform, substance abuse, other. And then that needs to be in caption. Okay. And if I continued, I would then just be writing more. But this is a great example of how like I didn't feel I was able to start, and then I've done a bunch of it. I think what I will do is I'm gonna finish out this Cthulhu section. Yeah, because I started writing and I realized I wanted to continue talking about the sanity stat up here rather than returning to it later. So moved the stuff about the sanity stat and so forth up there. And then was looking in here as well. I'm gonna ignore that chapter. Yeah, I'm not too worried about including all of the text about treatment. But I do want to include I want to make it really clear how explicitly they list it from the DSM. It's work time. Well, that's good because I'm already working. So yeah, there's a glimpse into what I'm doing. That's what my 5-minute break is apparently. Um, but yeah, we're gonna jump back in. Well done for things you are managing to do. I feel a lot better now I've started it, as was always going to happen. Although I'm simultaneously cold and too warm because I'm next to my heater, but the room is cold. So I'm like, my legs kind of wish that I had the heated blanket on, but my body really doesn't wish that I had the heated blanket on because I'd then be too warm. And I've got a heating pad on my back as it is. Or more specifically, and this is mildly embarrassing, but I'll explain it and it'll make more sense. I actually have a heating pad on my arse, and the reason the reason for that is that I've been having a load of coccyx pain. And then like through the ligaments. Basically, everyone knows that your coccyx is like the end of your spine, right? But it is also the bit that then connects to the ligaments that then go like through in your SI joint, which is the joints, through your hips and stuff. And because I sit a lot, I've been getting pain there. So I am sitting on a heating pad right now. Yay. Disability is so fucking glamorous, guys. All right. Let's do another 15 minutes. And what I'll do is we might then have a little more like less structured time and then move back into it. I should also, after this one, take a proper break from stream. Because if I don't do that, then I cannot manage the whole period of stream, and I am being sensible sometimes, allegedly. All right, timer 15:0. Let's go. Damn it, I was trying to get this section done, but then I wanted to reference things. Alright, we're dropping. I'm gonna continue working on it anyway, because we're dropping out of, like, more intense Pomo. Let me... I'll leave the co-working thing up so you can continue doing tasks if you want. I had a third example of a game with a sanity stat. Was it Darkest Dungeon? Yes. Many of these are all horror games, many of which have a Lovecraftian theme to them. So it is easy to see. I don't actually need to read aloud what I'm typing. I don't know why at the moment my microphone is on. I feel the compulsion to do that. This is really annoying because I don't like having a paragraph that's that short, but it also feels incorrect to link it into this. I'll just leave it like that for now. This is a first draft. This is not edited, so I think that's okay. Hi Blau, how are you doing? Happy New Year. Oh, that section's done then. Woo! Alright, I'm saving paranoia. Which means I have 2 sections left to do before Monday. My writing app is Scrivener, actually, which I have found fantastic for PhD writing. There's a lot I increasingly know more. There's the warning. I increasingly know more and more academics who are using it. I find it much nicer to write in than Word or Google Docs or anything like that. Mostly because I'm writing something that is so long that seeing it all as one document is a pain in the arse, and equally having 20 documents that you need to open is a pain. I'll move us onto the big Scrivener screen for a moment so you can see. And if I take off the... No, not that one. That one. You can see this a bit better. But pardon the fact that it's weirdly aligned. So you can see here on the left, I've got all of the different chapters of my thesis. And then I'm able to do things like this, where this is like the notes I did in my initial write-up of this section. And then here on the left is the actual chapter as is being written. And I can have like all of that planning and stuff in there. It's so much nicer than having to open 20 documents in Word. It has a robust footnote system. It can do more than I do with it. I also use Obsidian. Yeah, it's similar in that sense. It's closer to a word processor in the formatting setup, as you can see up here, than Obsidian is. Because I love Obsidian, but writing in Markdown would not work for me. When I can export this as a Word document and most of the formatting will stay the same. Annoyingly, I can't show you the compile screen, I think, yeah, because it doesn't... Basically, it has really like robust export controls where you can make sure that it yeah, there may be a plugin that does it. So I use Obsidian, for those that don't know, is a note-taking app. It is very similar to Sublime Text in terms of having tabs open, or things like Evernote in terms of you know, being able to the way that file structure works. I use it for literally everything else, apart from my thesis. Um, and it's really good in that way. But yeah, it's all in Markdown, so the formatting wise, it's not quite as good for this kind of work, because of the need to have like specific formatting. And here I've been able to set up the style guide. So for example, here where I've got like an image, and then I've formatted how the caption is meant to appear for the image description and saying that it's figure 5.1. And similarly with my block quotes, they're set up in a specific way, which I'm then able to keep everything. I was using Notion at one point as well. Notion, if you want to be really specific, or creative with how you're making things appear, if you want something incredibly bespoke, Notion is the thing you want to use. But for me, I don't need anything that extravagant, so Obsidian is great because it just lets me, you know, do what I want to do with it. And the fact that it has the thing like Sublime Text does, where you can open tabs side by side, much like I've done here in Scrivener, is really good, especially for when I'm when I'm playing a song and I need the chords for the whole and the lyrics for the whole thing up. I can just open tab after tab, which is great in that sense. But yeah, so this is what we're doing today: is getting these last bits of this section done. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I had and I do still like refer to it at points. So I made uh, a a big table of like different readings and things to read for my thesis, because I used it at the start, like around the start of my PhD. And I had everything like tagged. So if I was like, I want a reading that's specifically from disability studies, I could filter. And it was really good in that sense. So that's very helpful. So yeah, if you're doing something like that, where you want to do something really specific, and especially feed information in and have it spat out in a certain way, then it's fantastic for that kind of like database work. And so I think there's people for whom Notion is going to be better. For me personally, I'm happy now with Obsidian, especially for the fact that it, you know, getting a Notion set up that worked both on my computers and on my phone was always annoying to me. Whereas Obsidian being simpler works better, being cross-platform. Because yeah, having a phone app where I can then type notes in when I'm out is great. But yeah, I'm gonna take a quick 5-minute break, and then we're gonna come back. I think I'm probably gonna do the cyberpunk section and leave D&D for tomorrow, just because the cyberpunk section follows on so much from the section I just did. And I think once again there will be a lot of being able to copy from the stuff that's already written out here. Thank you, Past Me. Past Callie has been great. Past Callie like prepped chores for me today, and so I was able, even when I didn't feel great, to like run the washing machine. In fact, probably what I'm going to do is stand up and hang the laundry, because that gets me moving around. And it needs doing because it's just sitting in the washing machine right now. And yeah, past Calanthe also did all of this. So thanks, Past Me. Yeah, I will leave you with music. I will be right back. I'll be just a few minutes. Make sure you take a break as well. Stretch, hydrate, whatever you need to do. Caffeinate if that is also necessary. And I will be right back. Hello again. Welcome back. All right. Let's have a think. Okay. There we go. Now, the question is, do I want... What the fuck is this second bullet point? I'm probably just going to be tracking that increase in pathology. It's really just looking through this and working out how I want to edit this down. I think probably we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to do 2 15-minute pomos. That should be enough to finish it. And I want to set quite a hard limit of when I do finish that section, that's it for work today. Because otherwise, I will overwork myself. And this way I can go, because what I want is I want to get to Monday, go into campus, have my mentoring session, which is the first one back, which will be lovely because Monday is the first day of term. Go sit, do the form for my submission, submit my entire thesis. Thus far. As you do. And then go to choir. So if I can keep it so that, I don't have to do any of the actual writing of the thesis chapter on Monday, that is ideal. So yeah, I think we'll do, let's put us back to 02. And yeah, we'll do 15 minutes on, 5 minutes off, 15 minutes on again. Because I think that worked well for me today. This is the thing I find with Pomodoros. I think people, especially in any kind of studying, so whether that's, in a taught environment, like a taught undergrad or masters, or whether it's in research, I think there's this kind of obsession with doing 50-minute Pomodoros and this idea that you have to work for longer. And it is true that if you're having to code switch a lot, like you're going from like jobs where you're required to do some, like, I don't know, customer service, and then you're also working on like writing code for something, to use the word code again. And if you're like transferring between those tasks a lot, which require very different skills, or like you're doing some coding and you get yanked out of it because a colleague wants to ask you a question, that kind of thing, that can be problematic. But I think for Pomodoros, I found it's worked best when I've listened to myself and gone, actually, yes, I do need a longer one today, or no, 15, 20 minutes is fine. I actually learned this from the unfortunately wildly problematic, as it transpired, NaNoWriMo, back in the early days, before it disintegrated itself, would do sprints, which was just writing as much as you could, writing solidly for 5 minutes, and they would do those all of different lengths, and I found those very useful for me then. And so this is kind of the same thing, effectively, and I found having those at different lengths useful. So yeah, let's do a 15-minute sprint, as it were, and yeah. All right, I'll also fix my tasks when I do that because my mine are wrong. All right. Yeah, and I think for different, different contexts, different lengths work. Timer 15:05. Okay. So yeah, if you're following my timers, you're welcome to. If like Mer is saying, you've got a specific timing set up that works well for you with whatever task you're doing right now, use that, because you know how you work better than anyone else does. Don't listen to me just because I'm telling you what works for me. Unless you want to test a different method, in which case, go for it. But yeah, I'll be, I say I'll be back. I'll be here, working, silently. Ooh. There's still a minute left, but I finished the section. I didn't even need the second 15 minutes. I think because, as it happened, the points that I wanted to make about Cyberpunk were the things that I'd written down already. So, which I think might be the case with the D&D one as well. So maybe I get an easier day tomorrow. But honestly, I'll take that. I will take that as an outcome. So yeah, I don't even need that last Pomodoro. The poor timer. Is that, can I timer cancel? There we go. Oh, right. So yeah, basically what I've done, and I'll hop over here so I can show you more clearly. So in the stuff we did today, I had some stuff about Call of Cthulhu already. I have expanded on how Call of Cthulhu inspired the inclusion of the sanity stat in other games. So the insanity stat in Warhammer Fantasy, and then a quick list of board games and video games. Those all need citations. Hang on, let's insert comment. Citations needed for these. I'll do that another time. Like tomorrow. And then went into like further into the idea of temporary and permanent insanity as occurs in Call of Cthulhu, including then going into the way it uses schizophrenia as a cultural object, and the way that it lifts very explicitly from the DSM in its pathologization, and the added complication of what it does with forced amnesia in the latest edition, its inclusion of sectioning and rendering someone mentally incompetent and giving the DM control of their character, which is a whole other thing, which honestly I think someone could write a paper just about that. Then the cyberpunk section, which obviously I summarized how cyberpsychosis appears in the different editions, including the way it draws that equivalence between psychosis and violence, then dials back a little bit on that, but then brings in psychology and psychiatry and very much holds them up as the authority of the controllers of knowledge, and including the hair psychopathy checklist in a way that is not just like, hey, look at this official thing we've cited, but also now we're going to mandate that you roleplay according to it, which is obviously very a step further than just being like, hey, look at this psychology textbook. So yeah, that is what we've done today. Again, a big shout out to past me. This is going to be well over 5,000 words by the time I finish the section on D&D. But that's great, because that means I'm showing them that's exactly what I wanted. It's showing the board in a couple of weeks that I've got some really good substantial progress on this chapter. And I will also possibly write up I might not write this up, but I will be able to describe to them a summary of where I'm then going. Basically, we've got these examples from history, and then in the chapter, I don't know if I've written any of this here. Yeah, that we're then going to look a bit more at some case studies of mad characters in actual play to bring actual play in as well, which is TTRPG shows, for those who don't know the term actual play, or podcasts. Have a look at those a bit. And then like the function of play, as in play as a concept in role-playing games, and how it interacts with madness. And yeah, that's it. That's the plan. I'm really excited to finish this chapter, which will take several more months. I think like I don't know if I have a specific point that I think by summer I want to be moving on to introduction and conclusion and editing. my introduction is going to be particularly intense because it involves me like quite elaborately putting forth what things exist in the existing literature, and because I'm interdisciplinary, that's like, here's the existing literature of 5 different research fields, which is always a problem of having to do that. But so yeah, I'll hopefully move on to that, and obviously that concluding. And did I call... No, I called the end of this Beyond Pathology. I was like, my conclusion is called Beyond Madness at the moment. um, but yeah, it's weird to see the end in sight, because 6 years is a long time to be doing one thing. And it's even weirder to be coming to the end of that, and also scary. But successful. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I've really appreciated the company and support. I hope you have been able to use this space to get some things done yourself. And if you haven't, that's totally okay. Maybe, if you have been trying and stuff hasn't been happening, you've been trying for a couple of hours now, so go take a break, a proper break, and then come back to it. Sometimes that's exactly what you need. I personally am going to go play Oblivion Remastered some more, or Minecraft. I'm also going to hang my laundry because I didn't actually do that in the break. But yes, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Please take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see all of you tomorrow at 4 p.m. GMT again, so same-ish time as today. We'll do the section on D&D. Bye, folks.